Listen, some 55,000 Maryland immigrants are now going to qualify for President Obama's government immigration reprieve, his amnesty plan. What does that mean to you when it comes to jobs? What does that mean to you as a taxpayer? Good day to have Stephen Camarota, Director of Research for the Center for Immigration Studies, on board. Hello, how are you, Stephen?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Well, let me start with that question. That's a lot of folks, and they're going to become, much more permanent citizens. That gives them additional rights within the government. What does this mean to us as taxpayers? What does this mean to us when we're out there looking for a job?
Well, it means probably that these illegal immigrants, remember, these are all people in the United States illegally. They either snuck across the border or they overstayed a temporary visa and didn't go home as they had agreed. It means that they'll probably be competing for a wider segment of jobs. So in the past, they may have been confined to, a day labor or jobs that didn't require any kind of background check. But now they'll be able to move in any kind of job that does require a valid Social Security number, because they'll have one. The government's going to give them one, because they're going to have work authorization. So they could become anything from a security guard or a screener, any kind of job like that, any kind of job working for like FedEx or UPS, again, where they do lots of background checks and a valid Social Security number is required. They'll be moving into those kinds of jobs. So they'll be moving up the ladder. They won't be as likely to be at the bottom end.
All right, so that means fewer jobs for those people who are already looking for jobs, right?
Right. It probably does mean more job competition, particularly for those Marylanders or those Americans in general who have, say, only a high school education. Most illegal immigrants in the country, we know from a variety of sources, have modest levels of education. On average, they actually have about a 10th grade education. These are adults. So the kinds of people they compete with are folks who don't have college degrees. And
so what does this mean to us as taxpayers? Is it going to cost us more in any way?
Well, it probably means that the immigrants will pay more in taxes, though some are already paid on the books, but it also means they will become more eligible for certain services, things like the Earned Income Tax Credit and the additional Child Tax Credit, which are cash payments from the government for low-income folks. So it probably means that there'll be, if you looked at the balance sheet, a net drain on public coffers, mainly reflecting those education levels. People at those education levels don't generally make that much regardless of legal status, so they don't pay that much in taxes, and they and very often their children are eligible for welfare programs.
Stephen Camarota, I saw a report in the Baltimore Sun recently that said there are about 55,000 individuals that we know of in the state of Maryland that would qualify for the president's executive action. And there's this group, Casa de Maryland. They have actually been holding workshops, educating these people, letting them know, answering all their questions, to giving them all the pointers on what they have to do to qualify for the program. And then in May, once they start doing the screening of these people, they're going to start actually working them through the entire process. And this is, these guys get government funding as well. Is this really the best strategy on this thing, as people in Maryland are already having a tight crunch with job issues?
Well, I mean, look, the larger question is, does the president even have the authority to do this? Does the president have the authority in any area of law to say, I'm not going to enforce the law on 5 million people, to announce it in advance, to convey a benefit, that is Social Security numbers, work authorization, identity and travel documents? Does he have the authority to do any of this? It would appear he doesn't. It would be like the president saying, I'm not going to enforce the Clean Water Act, or I'm not going to collect the capital gains. I'm instructing, federal agencies not to enforce the law. So I think you can make a powerful constitutional argument that he shouldn't be doing this, but he is.
Well, but who do you make? Okay. I hear you. Who makes that argument? Who do you make that argument to? And what's going to stop the president from moving forward? I mean, does this have to go immediately to the Supreme Court to make that? They're not going to jump into this. So who does it? The only thing that Congress can do is cut off funding, which they're trying to do right now.
Right. I mean, it's complicated because the agency that would implement it is funded by fees, so it gets even more complicated. But Congress absolutely has the authority to do it. But basically the Democrats in the Senate will filibuster and prevent the president from doing it.
Sorry, I just want to be clear here. When you say do it, Congress has the authority to stop funding, and that's where they're getting stymied by the Democrats in the Senate. But what about, you just said it's unconstitutional. who is going to move that ball down the field with regard to the constitutionality? Does Congress have standing on that? Can they take this up, and why aren't they?
Yeah, there actually is a case down in Mississippi where a bunch of federal employees are suing. They're from the Immigration Enforcement Agency, and this is the long setting. His previous amnesty that covered people who arrived at young ages, and what they're arguing in court is the president is explicitly asking us to violate the oaths that we took to enforce the law. And that case is moving forward, and we could see a ruling in it. But, you know, as your listeners know, the wheels of justice turn very slowly. Now, a whole series of states, at least 26, but I think it's more than that now, are suing the federal government over this policy, again, over its constitutionality. And we'll have to see if the states get granted standing in that case as well. So there are a few legal angles through the court system, but you're certainly right. There are standing issues. That is, will the court say you have a legitimate case to even move forward? And how will the courts ultimately rule? We don't know. But on its face, it does look unconstitutional. And actually, in that first case, a judge has already said that. It looks unconstitutional what the president's doing. But what the judge said was you have to go through this complaint system that the federal government has before you come to the courts.
You got a situation right now where we're trying to decide who's going to be our next Attorney General of the United States, someone who's supposed to uphold the Constitution. Loretta Lynch has testified under oath on Capitol Hill during her confirmation hearings that she believes that illegal immigrants have a right to work in this country.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. The idea that someone who's not even supposed to be in the country have a right to work in the United States. But, I mean, she is Obama's Attorney General, or wants to be, so maybe it's not so surprising.
Well, it isn't. And, I mean, let's face it, the president is not going to nominate someone who believes that he acted unconstitutionally. And, unfortunately, I mean, I believe it was unconstitutional, but as the wheels of justice turn slowly, as you said, it's not like a judge is going to be able to put a stay on the president's executive action. This policy is going to happen. Now, whether it is found to be unconstitutional after the fact, that may happen. But that, what do you do with these people after the president has done this for them? Unless, I mean, again, I'm asking honestly, can the Supreme Court step in? They are the highest court in the land, and they are a co-equal branch of government. Can they put a stay on the president's action?
Yes, all those things are certainly possible. A federal court could rule that he cannot proceed with this and it's unconstitutional, but of course they'll appeal it up, and then it's a question of whether they'll grant an injunction or not, which will try to stop it, and then that can be appealed. So again, it's a long legal process. Ideally, Congress, reflecting the will of the American people in the Constitution, should act. But as I say, as we pointed out, the Democrats in the Senate will make sure that doesn't happen.
All right, Stephen Camarota, Director of Research for the Center for Immigration Studies, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.